And away we. Whoa! Hello! Hey!
Oh,
look at the little.
hey!
We're
here.
I love those things.
Hey.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to the show. This is the Arcadia issue 5. We don't say it that way. We say Arcadia 5. Arcadia 5 live stream. Traditional Elven greetings, everyone. And as is traditional, we have each of the authors on, and we hang out with them for about 20 minutes, and we do a live Q&A, which James, which is James.
You're all duck.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Which James hosts. James asks the questions. I just sit here quiet as a mouse, and I watch chat, and I relay any questions you folks have to our authors. So hopefully you've had a chance to check out Arcadia 5 on our Patreon and read the awesomeness of it. And if not, head over to our Patreon. $5 gets you all the back issues and this month's new issue. It's a steal. It's a deal. It's the crime of the century. With no further ado, I will let James take over.
I never really noticed that the author, when we have them on, is crammed between us, which is like an interesting way of doing things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's because they are the center of this endeavor. That's why they're in the middle.
Exactly. The seat of power here.
Exactly.
In this interview. Leon, it's great to have you back. For people who don't know, why don't you tell them who you are, what you do in the world, and what you wrote for Arcadia 5?
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me on. My name's Leon. I'm a game designer. Wow. I mostly
I'm a game designer.
I have that realization like once a week, and it never gets old. I mostly do a lot of D&D stuff. Most of my stuff is on the Dungeon Masters Guild, and you might recognize me from Arcadia 1. I wrote the Workshop Watches, and for Arcadia 5, I wrote Long-Term Curses.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you back. I think Workshop Watches is a fantastic adventure that many people have run, and chat might even have some questions about that for you as well. I've most recently seen run by Star Trek star and Rent star Anthony Rapp running it, and actually there's a funny connection, an Arcadia 5 connection with that adventure, which is that before Anthony ran that adventure, Carlos, who wrote the Goldmoniger subclasses, ran that adventure for Anthony. Wow,
that's cool.
So you can see, it all makes the world go round. But we're here to talk about Long-Term Curses, which is your Arcadia 5 article. What is Long-Term Curses for people out there who may not have gotten to dive into it fully yet?
Yeah, Long-Term Curses is 6 curses that work long-term. It is exactly what it says on the tin. If I'm not using alliteration, I will literally just name whatever I write as the thing that it is. And the thing that is particularly special, at least for me, about these curses is that they are not something that you can just do away with the casting of a 3rd level spell. They have narrative implications. They ask a lot of the party at the table in terms of role playing and teamwork and effort to really make them work for the table. So I think they're kind of experimental in that way. I hope they're fun. I haven't had a chance to use any of my stuff yet, but that's what it is.
Yeah, they are really fun curses, and some of them are things that we might expect, right? There's the Curse of the Cassandra, which I think, I shouldn't say what we would expect, but what we have seen this trope before, right? The Curse of the Cassandra is the curse associated with that obviously famous character from mythological lore who can predict the future, but no one believes them that things are happening. Or as I have seen people call it once the issue was launched, the Final Destination curse as well. And there are then some really other fun curses there, which were things that I had not really heard of or thought of before. So like the Curse of the Sordino is a very interesting curse because it has to do with music, and sort of for me was one of the most torturous of curses because it essentially makes it so that no one can play music within this area, this cursed area. So why did you want to create these curses that were more hardcore, couldn't be removed by the simple casting of the remove curse spell?
So, like most things, this is Willie's fault. A few years ago, Willie was running a game of D&D. He was running Out of the Abyss, and there was a hag that he had put in front of my character. I was playing a wizard, and the hag wanted my character's spellbook, and my wizard said, "No, you can't have that. This is mine. I need it for wizardly things." And the hag said, "Okay, well, if you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to curse you." And then my wizard leveled up to level 5, and she took remove curse, and that was the end of it. And I did it because I thought it wouldn't work, or I thought something else would happen. I don't know. It was some time ago, and I didn't really know too much about like remove curse and bestow curse and how those are.
That's really interesting that you intuited that without knowing and without having the history. You intuited it can't be this simple.
It can't be this easy. No, and it was.
It can't be this. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, "Oh, that's it. That's okay." But what if it wasn't it? And so that's how it happened.
Yeah. What struck me about this was because a lot of these curses are pulling from some ideas that we may know from old legends or things like that, that whenever we are cursed, we do expect there to be more because the stories are always about how there's more. You know, like King Midas has this whole thing about the golden touch that is this curse that he has to go through to break it. And it's not, hey, find a 5th level wizard to get this curse removed, right? And so that's why this was really intriguing to me, because I thought this is something that I think a lot of people feel when they play the game. And knowing that you have a knack for designing these things, it was really great to bring you on board. So can you tell me why you picked the 6 different torments that you picked?
Yeah. I think my goal for this article in particular was I don't want to call it a proof of concept, but I really did want to display that like curses can be a lot of different things. It can be a curse on a person, a curse on a location, a curse on a community, curse on an item. So all 6 of them I picked for different reasons. A lot of them are roleplay heavy. Some of them are mechanically heavy. And so when I was working on my pitch, I wanted to make sure that I had a really wide array of concepts so that anyone who was reading the article could look at this and be like, "Oh, this could be anything. I could just make something up and do it myself." I think in particular, I do want to tell this story. My favorite conception story is when I was coming up with the Curse of the Sordino, because I think I pitched it as like, it's like Footloose, but bad. But that wasn't how it started. Curse of the Sordino is like that because it is it's a reference to the most superstitious of sports of all time, baseball. It's a reference to the Bambino.
Superstitious sport of all time.
It is. It is.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
And so growing up as a Yankees fan, before 2004,
the enemy.
I know. Before 2004, we were all in the household very aware of that time that Babe Ruth got traded to the Yankees, and he was from the Red Sox, and he was so upset about it that he pushed a piano into the lake and cursed the Red Sox for 86 years. And for those 86 years, they did not win a single championship until the curse was broken. So the reason why it's called Curse of the Sordino was because I found out that, Sordino and, they rhyme. The bard's name is Gino Naomi, which is like the Italian name for George, and then word association with
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
That's really good. I was going to ask you how you came up with that name, because it's such a great name and so evocative for that curse, right? But it's really, really good stuff. So one of the things that is true about these curses, like you said, there's a curse that comes upon someone where they predict the future, but no one believes them. The curse of the Cassandra we talked about. And then there's also the curse of the betrayed, which is a curse that happens upon a small group of people after they betray someone and it ends in a tragic death, right? And that they are then essentially cursed to not trust one another for the length of time that the curse is active. These are both curses that require a lot of player buy-in, and not just for the person who is cursed necessarily, but then like everyone else around them also needs to have the buy-in of, I know you can predict the future and I'm not going to believe it. We all are working together as players in a story where our characters now no longer trust each other. So you have a lot of advice about how to roleplay those things in the article. And have you had a lot of success when you are in a group where there's conflict like that among characters, in keeping the conflict to the characters and not to the players?
I think when I first come up with an idea, I usually have a table that I've played at in mind when I'm like, oh, like this is the kind of group that's going to love this specific thing. And on Friday nights, I have an Eberron group who absolutely adores dramatic irony. That's like the thing that we do is I told everybody my character secrets because I love dramatic irony. But I think the rest of the group has a really, really good time playing around with the idea of, okay, this is what we know about our characters, and now how can we exploit that difference in knowledge to make something that is really, really cool and fun. And I think it has nothing to do with curses, but it is a fun story. There were two characters in our game who were very into each other, the bard and the fighter. And there was a changeling ranger who had changed into the bard to pretend to be her during like a street fight, so that they were going to split the profits of the bets of all of the who was going to win. Because the bard, she has noodle arms, and I'm allowed to say that because she's my character. But the ranger did not. And so the fighter, who had never been in love before, had never kissed anyone before, picked that moment because the player knew that the changeling had changed into my bard. The player knew that, but the character did not. And so the player made the decision to have the character choose to kiss the transformed ranger good luck, believing it was the bard. And like
Classic.
that specific moment, watching like all of that come together, where like all of the players knew this was going, it was completely tragic from the player, the character standpoint. I think like that specific moment and that feeling that we all felt at the table when we were building that together was exactly the feeling I was trying to capture with Betrayed and Cassandra.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then a wizard came in and cast a 3rd level spell and everything was fine.
And everything was fine.
There are some other great curses in here that I just want to highlight real quick. There's the Curse of the Living Dead, which is dead things keep getting up and rising, which includes a great template for zombie animal companions showing up, which is really, really fun. So, pet cemetery, essentially. Your pets are coming back to life, which is dope.
Shout out
and
to
I
that.
think
I think that was a tester's idea. I think that came from tester feedback.
Yeah, that they wanted to see, zombie cats and dogs walking around, which was great. And one of the things that you did about this is I love the unique ways there are to break the curse, right? So like, I was hoping you could maybe talk us through the way to break the curse of the living dead, which involves doing some gardening, and how you came up with that particular way, because each of these curses has their own sort of unique way to break them, right? Because that is a big part of the narrative and of the fun of these curses is like, well, how do I stop this thing? And so, each one sort of has like a mini adventure or task associated with it.
Yeah. So the way that you sort of break the curse on Curse of the Living Dead is you have to grow vegetables, tubers, like a potato or something like that, and the potato effectively absorbs a lot of the malicious magical energy that has been festering. And then you should probably, once those tubers are fully grown, dispose of that responsibly. Um, I think in the article it says something like "Don't eat this," which
Right,
of course
right.
means someone's going to eat it, and that's not my problem. At that point, that's your problem, buddy. But that actually came from. I'm not a big plant person. I actually, one of my basil plants on the windowsill right now is dead. Rest in peace. So I'm not very good at it, but I do like playing plant-based video games like Story of Seasons and Harvest Moon. And one of the new mechanics that they had introduced was effectively growing certain kinds of crops that can improve the quality of your soil. And so I was like, wow, yeah, there must be like real science behind that. And then I did some research on that, which I have since forgotten because I wrote this months ago. I discard information that I no longer need. It's very not a great way of doing things, but yeah, I think I landed on tubers because I was doing some research and it was like, yeah, potatoes and those types of vegetables, root vegetables will absorb toxins in the soil. That's cool. Like trapping a lich soul inside of a potato, I think is very weird and very funny.
It's hysterical. I know for some reason that reminds me of like Portal 2. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh yeah, it's a regular phylactery. Ha ha ha. So
how do I pull a plug on this?
It'd be great if a cane could just come out and pull me out.
Yeah,
this way.
It would be great. Yeah. So. Yeah.
So I do want to talk real quick about Curse of the Watchers. Obviously, very cool, very inspired by the birds. Bunch of birds show up, keep watching you, and eventually attack you, which I think is super fun. And then you might kill all the birds, and then more show up. Like, right? That moment of we've disposed of these birds, and now here are more birds. I think it's just a great sequel, post credits moment for characters to have. And can you talk a little bit about this one, because this comes when you like pick up a cursed magic item? What was the inspiration here?
Well, I think one of the things that is interesting about curses is normally they're given to people who probably deserve them. And so one of the things that you could do to deserve a curse is take something that doesn't belong to you. And so I definitely did want to have like some kind of item curse that was like, you took this, you probably shouldn't have, now deal with these consequences. And I think that's why, like, my favorite part of that curse is it's actually the way that you break it. Is you have to cast Speak with Dead and basically bargain with the soul of the dead person who is haunting this item. Be like, I'll please let me use it. And I think like mechanically you just have to make a couple of persuasion checks, but I could imagine that being like a really, really fun conversation depending on like who this soul is and what the item is. Right.
Yeah. It was important enough to this person that they were buried with it. Right. And you robbed their grave. So it's going to be an awkward conversation to start, probably.
That's great. Yeah. We need more consequences for people going into dungeons and stealing stuff.
Yes.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to take some questions, Leon, but before we do, there's one other thing I would need to ask you about that isn't Arcadia related. It relates to Bardcore Brawlers, which is your latest independent release on the DMs Guild. Could you just tell people about Bardcore Brawlers a little bit? Because I think they and Matt will get a kick out of it.
Absolutely. So Bardcore Brawlers is a rule supplement and a short adventure that allows you to engage in what I call musical combat. If you've ever seen that scene from Scott Pilgrim versus the World where he They go head to head against another band. They play at the same time in the Battle of the Bands, and then there's like weird monster stuff that comes out of their amps. It's like that, but like rules for it that you can do. And so I had been working on it for a really long time. It was definitely a huge passion project, but it was a really, really fun design exercise taking the rules for 5e combat and sort of forcing them to do something that they're not supposed to do, which is play music with them. And I have like several different bands, like sample enemy bands that you can fight in the adventure, and they all have different there's a girl power punk rock band that is made of all tieflings. There's like a 5-piece power metal band made of dragonborns. There's 2 bluegrass playing goblins. It's a great time. They all have Spotify playlists. It's a very, very on brand release for me, and it was super fun to do. It's super fun to play.
Excellent. Well, Matt, what does Leon have in chat?
Got a whole bunch of people saying variations of how much they love the workshop watches. Mambo says workshop watches has been my player's favorite module so far. Thank you. And I can personally attest to the number of people in our Discord who regularly show up to sing the praises of the workshop watches. I think it's one of the most popular articles so far in Arcadia. Alexander Mason says, I'm loving the curses, amazing work, starting a session in 15 minutes and I'm about to introduce one. So it's more high praise. A lot of people really like the idea of the long-term curses. Saboteur Studio says, if I want to make my own long-term curse, what should I consider to make the curse punishing and urgent but not crippling?
That's
and
a
were
really
these
good question.
was this how did you, and what was it like dealing with the playtesters? How urgent should fixing this curse be?
I think that such a cop-out answer, but that really depends on the party. Because if it's too urgent, then it becomes, like an immediate pressing thing that everybody at the table now has to agree, like, okay, we're going to take time off from our main quest and go attend to this. But if it's not urgent enough, then you can kind of live with it, and it just becomes more flavor than mechanics, which is also cool and fine. Like if you just want to play someone who's super cursed, go for it. So I think honestly, the first consideration, if you are going to make one for your table, is probably to decide like what role you want that curse to play at your table. If you want it to be just a one-shot adventure where everybody goes on a side quest and saves they play their undead harvest moon and they save the town from zombies, cool. But if you want it to be something that is, you can play over several sessions and really starts to get worse and worse. Yeah, I think that would be the first question. It depends on the role that you want it to take.
So the curses in the article, are some of them more urgent than others? Are some of them more like we as a party have to solve this? Are they things that the cursed character could do during like downtime solo between adventures? Or are they all of basically the same power level?
I think that some of them are a little more pressing than others. I would say probably Curse of the Betrayed has the potential to, bust up a party on night one, when you're all gathered around that campfire the first night and you roll like a 5 and you're like, oh, everyone here wants to kill me now. That can be a problem. I think slow polymorph, depending on how badly you like being a monster. I think that was a lot of feedback that we got from the testers that was like, this seems too cool. Like I wouldn't want to break this curse. I'm very powerful. I look like a big scary monster. And I was like, that's okay, working as intended. Some people do just want to be a big scary monster. It is. Yeah.
But then it's up to the dungeon master to create scenarios where being a big scary monster is not to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Slow polymorph, by the way, I think is probably, at least me looking at the Discord, I think slow polymorph is probably the most popular curse, and maybe for that reason, right? But also I suspect it's kind of because it fulfills this expectation of how polymorph should work, right? That maybe it shouldn't be just instantaneous, you failed your saving throw. Maybe it should be this long developing problem that gets worse over time. I don't know how to even though I know this person, I don't know how to pronounce their first name. Nas Williams says, what was the inspiration behind the Watcher's Curse?
The inspiration behind the Watcher's Curse is an episode of one of my favorite anime called Lupin the Third, which is a show about a phantom thief who goes and takes things that don't belong to him. And he actually, in the episode, which name I forgot, he stole it from someone who had stolen it from somebody's grave. And he didn't know that person was cursed. And the item, I think it was like a jewel or something, passed hands like 5 or 6 times over the course of the episode, and everybody just got attacked by birds. And I thought the change, because there is a variation on it, for me personally, was the very slow, like it starts as 1 bird and then it's 2, and you don't know what they're going to do, and they sort of follow you and they watch you, which is not what happened in the episode. It was just suddenly birds.
Suddenly birds.
Yes.
It sounds like the Alfred Hitchcock movie. For people, this is me. For people who haven't read the article, if remove curse doesn't fix a long-term curse, how do you remove it? And how does the cursed, and I think I know the answer to this, but how does the cursed person know how to break the curse?
That's a good question. Keep saying that, but these are good questions. So there are a couple of points in the article where remove curse actually does do something. It'll suppress some of the effects of the curse. So like you can use remove curse to get rid of a feature that you've acquired through slow polymorph, or get rid of a flaw that you gain through Curse of the Betrayed. I think that the way that I wrote a lot of the remove curse sections, because for each curse there was a section that has a paragraph of like, this is what you do. I reference things like magic taxonomists and like scholars and people who study curses.
You got your research. Yeah.
And yeah, you gotta go do your research. You have to, maybe that's the downtime activities. You go to a library and you have to do that. Learn on your own. One time, honestly, like one of my first thoughts when I was thinking about how much I hate the spell remove curse was that remove curse maybe could be used as a way to figure out how to remove the curse. Like instead of a remove curse, maybe use it like an identify, but for curses.
Yeah. Like a legend lore or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Do they still have legend lore?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Okay, good. I never know whether or not what edition of what thing. And that leads me, do they still have legend lore? Leads me to a question from me, which is, do you feel like there are other dramatic tropes that we expect to work a certain way in the game, but that spells like identify and legend lore just make completely undramatic? Are there other things like long-term curses that we, parentheses, you, could do that would increase that would give us more dramatic moments like this?
That's a good. I'm gonna stop saying that. It is a good question. I wish I had an answer for it. I mean, the short answer, yes, but I know that it's out there. I think one of the things that that bothers me usually is not bothers me because I do it too. Everyone loves to cast sending. In my games, a lot of my characters, they meet NPCs that they really like. Maybe fall in love with them. Who knows? You're really learning what types of games I love to play.
Sure.
And then they'll just, if they have extra spell slots at the end of the night, they will burn all of those spell slots texting the person that they love. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's just, that's what they do. And they will literally text me on my phone, like love notes to this fake NPC who isn't
Awesome.
real. And I'm like, cool, this is great. I have a paladin character who does not get sending. And what she does is that player actually writes me physical notes and hands them to me whenever we get to a town. And that can't be an article. It might be. I don't know. But like that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind is that, you know, that concept of communicating with people when you have magic. It's, well, you have 25 words and that's cool and fun. But what happens when you don't have 25 words? How do you send word to other people?
What happens if it's only emojis? Right? What happens what happens when you're restricted to what you can do? It seems like there's a bunch of spells that we currently have, like not just spells, but also like the way language works. Like, don't we expect, especially in a fantasy game where you've got dead empires laying around all over the place, don't we expect there to be things you can't understand? And don't we expect meeting other people from distant parts of the world or from these alien cultures, don't we expect communicating with them to be fraught with difficulties and misunderstandings? But basically there's a low-level spell that makes it so you can just understand whatever. And it's interesting that everything in this game is like, either you can't do it at all, in which case that's not very dramatic, right? Or there's a spell that makes it so you can just do it instantly, in which case that's also not dramatic. So what I'm saying is we need more stuff like long-term curses.
Yeah, we do. I know along the lines of curses, poisons and disease are two things that can be quickly neutralized. That, like, I think in every fantasy thing I've ever seen is there's like a slow burn, Frodo gets stabbed by a ring wraith thing and he's slowly turning into it, and we need this magic herb, right? Whereas like here, I remember the very first time I went to work for Wizards, I like tried to put a disease into an adventure, and Chris Perkins was like, if they have a first level paladin, that's not really going to be a problem. So we should probably change this to something else.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
We need more stuff like long-term curses to make the game more fun, more dramatic. Speaking of which, Ziba Shu, the legendary Ziba Shu, author of the animated spellbook, says, "What the story you told about the polymorph ranger scene, right, in your campaign, where the one character kisses another for good luck, and it turns out that person isn't who they think they are, and that dramatic irony, was that a serious moment for your players, or was that a comedic beat for the group?"
Oh, that was very funny. I think later the fallout was very serious. The fallout, because both of us had to apologize to the fighter for not making it clear sooner, and both of those moments were very serious and very dramatic. But in the moment, we were like, "This is so goofy."
Well, I mean, it's important that players have fun with it. I had a question, which is these curses, for people that haven't read the article. First of all, shame on you. Only $5, and you get not only this article, but a bunch of other ones that are super awesome. Are these the kind of curses where you should maybe talk to your players about them ahead of time? About like, hey, how do you, kind of in vague terms, how do you feel about the fact that I might be about to turn you into a giant fish man over the course of many weeks?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that I, as a dungeon master, I am very upfront about what the risks are to the characters going into a game, and then usually it's my players who will let me know what their specific boundaries are. I have players who are like, if you're going to curse me and it's going to be like a whole thing for my character, I'd like to know ahead of time so we can talk about like what journey I would be interested in taking that character. And then I have players who are like, the less I know, the better. Just like F me up. Right. It's fine.
Yeah. That makes sense, because this is going to be like, it's going to be part of their story, right? So to a certain extent, they should have some ownership over it, maybe. Right, depending on the kind of player you're talking about. William Harris asked a question that a lot of people asked. Were there other curses that you had ideas for that didn't make it into the article? Might we see a sequel, more long-term curses?
Ooh.
We would like to throw money at you. It's the thing we do.
I bet I could think of a couple more. But I don't. I think I made, like, when I was building the pitch, I was like, these are the 6 that I'm going to do. And I got really attached to them. So if I had any other ideas, like I said, I just discard information I no longer need. So they're not in my head.
It's interesting that, like,
many.
Go ahead, James.
Oh, I was just going to say, I have many pitches from Leon, and I would like to do them all.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we don't want to pigeonhole anybody. We don't want someone to end up having to just, I'm the person that writes long-term curses. No. No, but I also like how some authors, it's like bands, right? Some bands have these huge backlogs of unreleased material, and then other bands are like, no, we put every idea we had on the album. If we had any more ideas, we would have made more albums, right? Is that some writers, some articles, they arrive fully formed. And it's like, I had these 6 ideas and that was it. And some of them were like, no, I could do this forever. I made a note saying we should have an Arcadia article about doing research during downtime, because I don't think enough players, and maybe not enough dungeon masters are aware that, like, I have this experience myself, is that I as a dungeon master assume that my players can learn basically anything, about this world that they want to know, they can find out. It's a magical world. There are ancient dead empires full of libraries and knowledge and information. But I don't think most players think that way. I don't think most players realize that this fantasy world exists for them, and that if they take the time, and it may involve an adventure, and it may involve quid pro quo, right? I'll help you out, but you got to do something for me. But they can find out. Like, I remember, like, we always assumed that if there was any problem you had, all you had to do was find a sufficiently ancient dragon, right? And that was kind of one of the roles of dragons in the game, was that they were these ancient lore masters, among other things. And they would probably have, like, well, it would be nice if I had this extra treasure for my horde, so why don't you go out and risk your life? Anyway, sorry, that's an irrelevant tangent.
That's awesome.
But
that's awesome.
Anyway, I think that's it. And I think now we're late for our next guest.
We are, Leon. We spent a lot of time talking with you, but before you go, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me pretty much anywhere at Barillion. I'm most active on Twitter. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah, do it. Check out Leon's stuff on the Guild. And thank you so much for joining us, Leon.
Thank you for having me.
Yay!
Bye.
It was good seeing you again. Bye.
Wait.
Whoa!
Hello.
And
this must be Carlos.
The transition is jarring.
Yes. Hey, Carlos.
How are you?
Good. It's great to have you here. So Carlos wrote our Goldmonger subclasses article and is here to talk about all things Goldmonger and subclass. But before we get into that, Carlos, introduce yourself. This is your first Arcadia article. Tell people, like, who you are, what you work on, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, this is, it's really exciting, actually, to be sort of, wedged in between you two, but also wedged in between Leon and Sam, who, as you said earlier, I ran workshop watches, and I'm actually in my next Avernus session using Aces High, because they're escaping Zariel's fortress on Nightmare. So
nice.
really, it's great to be in an article with them. But I don't come from game design, though I guess now like Leon, I could say I'm a game designer.
You are.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely you are.
But I've, for the past decade, been working my way up the TV ladder out here in Los Angeles, and
nice.
I'm a recently minted WGA member and a staffed writer. I was,
congratulations.
Season 4. Thank you. Season 4 of Star Trek Discovery, which is where the Anthony connection comes in right there. And so, it's sort of like the two things kind of went hand in hand for me, because I, before Star Trek, I had kind of been thinking about pivoting into something else. And I had just on a whim applied for a Wizards of the Coast narrative designer job. And I interviewed, seemed to go really well, didn't end up getting it. But that Monday that I didn't get it, I got the call that I would be starting on Star Trek as an assistant in season 3. And so it was like a very sort of weird connectivity. Then I ended up running a game for The Room, one of the Uncaged anthology adventures by Alicia Furness. I think it's called Call of the Sea. It's a really cool, like, eco-feminist adventure. But then I started, really communicating with her and getting kind of plugged into the TTRPG world. And when she and Kat put out a call for pitches for the Eat the Rich collection, I ended up pitching on that, and that ended up being the first adventure I released. And then I've done a few DM's Guild. I most recently released a gazetteer for the Saragosse, which is 78 pages for $8. It's a real steal.
That's amazing.
Gross.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And,
That's better.
no, it was,
That's I think
it was
a
sort of-
better. That's a better price. I think per page. That's better than Arcadia. You should
Yeah,
be
it's about 10
charging
cents
more
a
for that.
page. So yeah, go. I worked really hard on it at the beginning of the pandemic in sort of like a terrified fugue state. So props to my editor Oliver, who was like, yeah, write like 5,000 to 25,000 words, and then I just handed him this horribly large Google Drive. But he put it all together. It's it looks really great. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of encounters in there that I'm really, really proud of. Like just that could be drop-ins if you're in any sort of naval setting, really. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm here and doing this. Oh,
that's awesome.
The other thing I did most recently that was super exciting was I wrote for the 80s zine of iHunt, which I made up a fake TV show. That's sort of like it got canceled and now it exists within the world of iHunt now in like the modern world. But it was like this whole thing. My friend Ash, who did my art for Eat the Rich, ended up doing some like cool like storyboard art and stuff like that. So if you pick up the 80s zine, you can see this really, really unique bit of narrative design that I don't really think that you would see in anything else. It's really cool.
Yeah. Tell people what iHunt is. So because our viewers may not be familiar.
So iHunt is a game put out by Olivia Hill and Philomena Young, and it's essentially Buffy meets Uber. It uses the Fate system, and it's a deconstruction of late-stage capitalism through the lens of millennials who use an app to hunt monsters. It's amazing. Like, it's one of the most incredible source books I've ever read. So yeah, definitely check it out if you haven't ever played it. It's great.
It's great. Like you... Yeah, which is sort of a bit strange, that I was right for iHunt, and then I and Eat the Rich, and then I write about greed-based subclasses. But maybe there's a common theme in my writing right there. That's exactly what I was going to say. So let's talk about the Goldmonger subclasses, because I think one of the hallmarks of D&D is like players who play characters who really want treasure, and this leans super hard into that idea. So I think when we first started working on it, I was a little worried about like, are these characters going to be so greedy that no one will want to play them? And then someone reminded me that like there is no such thing as that in D&D, that there are several people who play extremely greedy characters.
It seems to be the vice of choice for most players in general. They're going to embrace one thing. It's usually
exactly.
Greedy.
So how did you model these classes and create them? And also just like take us through each class a little bit as you talk about what the idea was behind the subclasses.
Well, so it sort of, it was spawned out of kind of a half-baked idea when I was avoiding work on the Saragosse, and I was like, I'm going to just noodle around with some subclasses and see what I can do to do Star Trek-themed subclasses, because it was, deep baked into my brain. And I started with a Trill symbiont warlock, where that was the sort of
is the symbiont like
you have a thing inside you?
Yeah,
that is
and that's like their patron?
Has all sorts of past lives, and that is the thing that is guiding you, and it will go on to the next body.
That is amazing. That is super cool. The idea of a Trill symbiont that is basically your warlock patron. That is fucking brilliant. I'm gonna swear on stream. That's how strongly I believe.
I got it mostly written up. I think it needs some play testing, but we'll see.
We can just file the serial numbers off and really just very strongly imply that this is for any game set on a station in space.
Yeah. So the next one that I came up with, which my favorite species in Star Trek is the Ferengi, because I think that they're just the coolest. I mean, they're all bad people, but they're the coolest.
The Ferengi in Deep Space Nine are the coolest.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Big difference. But I think like I wanted to explore a paladin that wasn't so good, but wasn't edgelord evil, because I feel like that's kind of the two flavors of paladin that you get. Yes, and of course I had to make it a goblin when I did the art order, because naturally. So I wanted to do something about a paladin that was a little more gray, but they're still heroes, but like you got to get hazard pay. Like, it sucks being a hero a lot of the time. Like, most of the time, you're not really thanked for the work you do. Or, in trying to do good work, maybe you cause a little bit of collateral damage, and, people don't really appreciate it. And so I wanted to do a paladin that sort of embraced that. I also feel it was a little kind of inspired by Geralt in The Witcher, where it was just like, hey man, pay me and I will kill this monster for you. Just make sure I'm paid. And so, the idea sort of mechanically behind that had to be someone who was good at making friends, but also good at turning that friendship into an edge or an advantage over the person that they're friends with. And so that's where, a lot of the abilities like war is good business, peace is good business is their channel divinities. Also, all of the abilities are...
War is good for business. Peace is also good for business. Yeah.
They're all plays on the rules of acquisition.
Yep.
Which is the Ferengi religion. And so, it was, totally kind of taken out of that. It was kind of fun playing with the spells. Like, I think this was probably, out of all of them, James, and remind me, this was probably the one that stayed the closest to the original thing that I sent you. There's like some finessing here and there, but this was pretty much like the core thing that I sent, though I was really happy to use Celeste spell Attract Metal. It felt really great, though. Man, are there a lot of spells in Alabasters that I would have thrown all over all of these classes had I seen them beforehand. But yeah, so I think it's all about being kind of like a mercenary charmer, and really sort of having that big wide smile while you're holding that knife behind your back, just ready to, just in case they don't pay you out. And then from there, I was like, okay, so, I sent that to James, and James is like, we can't do a Star Trek themed article. I was like, fair. That's not a thing. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to pull it back and kind of like grab at what kind of attracted to me about this. And it was sort of the themes of greed as a tenet for that class. And so what would it look like for the other divine classes if greed was sort of embraced as a tenet? And so that obviously the next one was the Cleric of Avarice, which actually I think for me in developing them was the hardest one for me to land on kind of the core mechanic Prophet motive, which was the replication of domain spells that you cast. You cast, say, protection from energy on your fighter. You also then gain the benefit of that for as long as your concentration is maintained. And then later, you gain the ability to jealously gobble up the effects of spells cast by others, whether they be friend or foe. So if, there's 4 of you in the party and, that paladin's like, hey, I'm going to put Bless on everybody. Cleric's like, I'm good. I got it covered. They can just take that effect and put it on themselves as well. So, and then by the time they reach their capstone, they have the ability to do their first domain spell without concentration. So effectively, they could stack 3 buffs on themselves, 2 of which would not be relying on their own concentration, which I think could be a pretty, it could find itself in a pretty nasty combinations for people. I'll say the most challenging thing about this class was the domain spells, because let me tell you, the SRD does not give you a lot to work with in terms of just things that are interesting and fun. And that was like the thing that I was like chiefly concerned with was like, is this core mechanic going to be fun to play? Because like the second level mechanic, that's going to be the thing that you do throughout your entire playthrough is that thing. Chances are you're probably not going to that capstone. So you're definitely going to be taking advantage of Prophet motive. And then, going back to that art, that Minotaur is...
Right?
Huh. Yes.
So that was based on one of my original characters who was a order cleric, but he was of the Orzhov in Ravnica. So he was basically an avarice cleric. I mean, he was like a relentless corporate bureaucrat who loved filling things out in triplicate. But at one point he had stuck his hand through a planar portal that closed, and so he lost his arm, at his shoulder, and so he ended up having to get his arm replaced.
Right, that's where that brass arm comes from.
Realized like that is it's better than it was in my imagination. And then for me, what was kind of like in watching the reaction, I thought it was kind of, in my mind, kind of the dark horse was the druid. It was the one that initially I was narratively the most interested in, but probably mechanically the least interested in, of, you know, just in terms of like what I would play first of my things. But like, I love hearing, like, I've been hearing people, like, you know, coming up with characters. I was lurking on the Discord. People are talking about like a turtle that they were putting all their gems in the shells and stuff like that. And I just like, I think it's a really cool class because I've never understood the druid's aversion to metal. Like, there's all sorts of metal that is naturally occurring in the world. Like, why not incorporate that in some way into your being? But, you know, I love the idea of, you know, druid sects that would guard places that, you know, wealth is found and where wealth would be removed from permanently. And I think that, like, they could be a really cool protagonist or antagonist. Like, I mean, what a great, like, you know, we always cast druid villains as kind of eco-terrorists, but this is a character that could be an economic terrorist, like disrupting currency trains during a war and stuff like, you know, it's like the dragon burning all the gold in Game of Thrones, like stuff like that. And then like trying to reduce it back down to its natural form and return it to the earth. I think there's a lot of narrative possibilities there, both as a PC and an NPC. So I think it's like
that is a cool idea.
To sort of for those who hadn't read it, it's the idea is these druids protect places of like precious metals and gems, and they in fact incorporate gems and metal into their body so they can harness those primordial powers contained within. And
nice.
that Duragar, that is also, and it was really interesting because James sent me the line art, and I was like, oh, this is like a gorgeous dwarf, you know, and like I love the like kintsugi pottery gold lines. And then when I got sent the inked version, I was like, this is terrifying in the best possible way. Like if I saw that come out of a cave, like my character would run in the other direction.
Shout out to our staff artist Nick Despain. Sorry.
Yes, incredible work. But so that's kind of the long and the short of where all the ideas kind of were incepted and the order it kind of came out. I think the druid probably went through the most playtesting because we had a lot of back and forth over material costs of the gems and whether or not the gems should cost anything. Like if originally in my thing the first ability would require a 50 gold piece gem to install into your hand, a 100 gold piece gem in your chest, and a 300 gold piece gem in your head. And, you know, in talking with the playtesters, they kind of bumped on that a little bit because it sort of then really relies on the DM to get you that thing that you want to sort of move your class forward. And so, you know, for me, it never really seemed like that big a deal because like a level 1 wizard can get, you know, a 50 gold piece diamond to use for chromatic orb, and it's not, nobody's going to balk at that. But I think that what we landed on, which I think was back and forth with the playtesters, then a little bit with Sadie, right? Was the idea that like maybe they're growing them, and it's like the sidebar in there. Maybe they're growing them. Maybe these gems are family heirlooms, and so it's like you work it in as part of your narrative. And I thought that actually really enriched the sort of narrative potential of the class. Like, you know, maybe you have like a little crystal garden that you carry around everywhere. I think it's, you know, there's so many different ways you could go with it.
Yeah. It. I mean, that was a really fun one, and the testers had a really good, I think, conversation kind of with everybody about like, why is this? What is this? The different styles of play, and like, how can we make sure that we're not putting work on the GM by demanding they provide these, but also we want to keep this idea that like these gems are important to you because you're putting them in your body. That was really, really fun. Another cool thing that came about from this article, and then we'll grab some questions from folks, is the God of Deals. And this was your idea, Carlos. You said, you know, like, well, since these are all sort of divine spellcasting classes, it would be cool to have a deity to show people that greed is not just an evil impulse, right? That greed is something that makes the wheel of the market continue to turn, and helps, you know, with creating new technology and things like that. So you created the God of Deals. Tell me a little bit about the God of Deals.
Yeah. So, Tao, The P is silent. The apostrophe is superfluous, like all apostrophes in Star Trek. But the whole idea behind Tau is the Great Material Continuum, which again is inspired by I think it's an episode in the 7th season. It's like Betrayal, Faith, and the Great River, where Nog, one of the Ferengi, is trying to trade for jargon, and so
Technobabble.
The whole episode is him basically haggling with a bunch of different people, trading things back and forth, taking a have and replacing that have, or taking that have to the next want, and then taking something from them to the next one. And so it's like the cycle that keeps the universe going is the exchange of material goods and services. And so the idea was like a god that sort of exists at the nexus of all that is like, I always picture the, like in The Simpsons, I think it was, it's Shiva or something, when they sort of go down into the earth at one point, and it's like pressing all the buttons and stuff like that, and it's sort of like a being kind of at the center of all the deals that like kind of flow through them between, this world, be it Faerun and maybe Eberron and stuff. These things exist in and out, outside of those things. And then Black Moon Day is a dumb pun about Black Monday. I'm sorry. But Black Monday is the day, when the stock market crashed and everything failed inexplicably, and so I wanted to sort of honor that as like because we don't really know what happened on that day, and so it was a day that contracts across the multiverse failed, which be they contracts with devils, fae, or any sort of great old ones. If those contracts suddenly were nullified, there would be catastrophic events happening all across the planes. And so I like a deity that is sort of preventing a like material apocalypse as their sort of central tenet. Is like, I have to keep things flowing, I have to keep the market moving, or else everything will collapse in on itself.
That reminds me of Ned Beatty's speech in Network, where he talks about like, the world is a corporation. There are no countries. There are no ideologies. There's just the flow of goods, right? And when you hear it said that way, it's like this it's almost, and it's intended to be religious, right? It sounds like this religious ideology.
There is no capital above capital.
Wow.
Oh,
nice.
But yeah.
So, Matt, what sort of questions does chat have for Carlos?
We got a bunch of really cool questions. And not unusually, I have some questions. So when you said that you ran D&D for the room, for the Star Trek folks, what kind of experiences had they had with the game? Is this, were you introducing them to it, or were they like,
most
of
them, they hadn't played. 2 of them had played when they were younger. One of them had a mean big brother DM. So he was always like, you can't trust the DM. You can't trust the DM. And I was like, buddy, I'm friends. I'm a friendly DM. Like, I'm not here to ruin your shit. So it was, it was a really fun time because, like, I love playing with new players because, like, they don't know what they can't do, and so they come up with wild-ass solutions to things. And so, it was a room full of writers and other creatives, and I think that for me, like, that's always, like, the best, is when you get people who really love narrative and who really embrace story and character and understand how those things work. And so it was just, like, it was very casual Saturday. We came into the office and all rolled some dice around the table, and we all had a really good time. And the first thing they asked me was, when are we doing this again? And I'm like, guys, this is a one shot. I'm already running a campaign.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I always enjoy running for new players because it helps me break my own preconceptions about how people play. Because growing up, starting as a teenager, I thought a lot of the behavior I was seeing among myself and my friends was because we were kids and we were immature. But then the older I get and the more adults I introduce the game to, I realize that doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the fact that you're a new player. New players want to experiment and do crazy stuff and misbehave because they don't get to do that in their normal life. Ginger coleslaw. This is the best question. This is not going to get beat. Was Garen Nails inspired by Elon Musk? I'm thinking specifically of his
Joel Olstein and the Grand Nagus from DS9.
That's awesome. That's of course brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Did you James in the pocket was a direct reference to Musk.
That's exactly what Ginger Coleslaw said. I'm thinking specifically of his parents owning an emerald mine and worker exploitation. That is fucking brilliant, Carlos. Carlos, you're a genius. James C asks, how early did you lock in these 3 subclasses? And this, a lot of people have the same question. Like Felcidian says, if there was a 4th subclass, what class would it be for?
Ooh, a 4th one, like Instill Greed. I mean, if I was sticking in the theme, I would probably try to go with a Ranger. I have no idea what it would be right now.
Well, I mean, a Ranger that goes after hordes, right?
That's true.
A lot of like old school. I mean, not just dragons, but it used to be the monster manual told you what kinds of treasure each monster had in its lair, quote unquote. So that's definitely something that seems like right up a Ranger's alley.
Treasure delver type. Type of thing. Yeah, that could actually be really fun.
It's interesting. I should have known, like, your love for specifically Deep Space Nine shows in your article. Like, I love the fact that one of the subheaders is profit motive, right? And it's explicitly profit, religious profit, reference to a Deep Space Nine episode. That makes my heart grow 2 sizes, because not only is DS9 my favorite Star Trek, I think it's one of the best TV shows I've seen. Somebody asked this. I don't know who exactly this is a question for. This might be a question for me. Rock and Sherry says, how do I adapt the Goldmonger subclasses to an Illrigger? Well, we only showed the Illrigger only has 3 subclasses. There are supposed to be 7 archdukes in hell, so you could definitely have. Yeah, exactly. You could. That's exactly what I was gonna say. You could definitely have an Illrigger who is devoted to Mammon, and whether that means they want to acquire treasure or they go after people who acquire treasure, I think that would be up to the author at that point. Trey McLemore says, I want to play a Warforged gilded druid like an off-brand Iron Man. I think that's hysterical. How much did the testers impact the article? How much did the article change from your original draft to what we finally saw?
I don't know if it, like, there weren't, I wouldn't say that there were like drastic changes from them, but full credit, like they made like incremental changes with each sort of stage that like really made those subclasses shine. Like I would say that the way that when I first sent out the first draft, like everything you see was probably about like 60% rougher than it is, and they sort of helped tighten everything up. Like spell selection got a little bit better, I think. It was really about my thing in hearing the feedback through James was like, are these things fun to play? Because that's ultimately at the end of the day, like, yes, they should be balanced. But like ultimately, like, am I gonna want to like pick this thing up? Which, I'm not gonna be able to go on D&D Beyond and put this in there. And also, don't put it on D&D Beyond. Anybody who's watching this, but you can't go on any of the services and like have this just ready made for you. So you have to put in that extra little bit of legwork if you want to use this in your home game. So it's like it has to be really fun. And I think that was really my goal with all of these, is have something that is both going to be mechanically fun to play, but also has a lot of narrative potential for you as a player.
That makes sense. Yeah. When I started playing the game in the 80s, which is about 400 years ago, gold and treasure was super important to us, I think because we were kids and we didn't have any money.
Mhm.
And so that fantasy of having a lot of money was really powerful for us in a way that I don't think it has been for me as an adult. Right now, when I think about money, I think about like bills, right? It's not this fantastical. It's not this
I think it's a
fantastical.
fantasy for a lot of millennials to have lots of money.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, and we also that's true, and we
Pretty
also
unattainable fantasy is feeling like lately.
that's a good point, and that kind of leads to my question: is like, is cash still just having? I think like we used to use gold like as score. Right, like we wanted more of it just to have more of it because it showed how much progress we had made in the game. Look at how much cash my character has. Is that still, do you think, a factor for modern players in 5th edition? Like, how important is gold?
I don't feel like it. I feel like whenever I'm a player and I have gold, I'm always struggling to find places to spend it on.
Yeah,
you know, and so I end up putting it into dumb projects that have nothing to do with like the, you know, like I'm not gonna hunt down a magic item and like research or try to make something. I'm gonna like make a school for wayward monsters, or, you know, like just do something weird and narrative with money, because otherwise it's fake money. Who cares? Like, you know, do something fun with it. And I just, because like I just feel like the items in D&D, it's like in 5th edition, and maybe it's just me as a DM, I feel like it's like handed out like candy. So I've never wanted for anything, and I feel like I've always struggled to spend my money. It's what's going on with my players right now in Avernus. Like, there's no opportunity to spend their gold because all they buy, you know, exchange stuff with this soul coins. So,
well, and because there's not really any built-in things to do with money, is there even a assumed desire that the players are going to want it? Like, is that a motivating factor for players in the modern age, or is it more about my character making progress, my character developing, saving the world?
Well, I feel like I feel like it is that the latter of those two, Matt. But I also feel like there is always that time, like everybody shakes down every NPC they run into. You know,
awesome.
Like it's like I gotta squeeze out a few more copper on them, and it's like, buddy, you're throwing 3 gold for an ale at the bartender. Like, why are you haggling for copper?
Right, that's probably more money than that guy has seen in a year. Right, at the same time. Right, that's a big part of. I think also when your players have a lot of cash, all of a sudden you start to learn a little bit about them as people. Right, you know, and like I remember
their servers.
Exactly. Like what do they start once they have money? What do they start using it for? And how, if at all, do they spread it around? So that always to me has been an interesting factor of the game, is how much does gold come into it? So to me, having like not explicitly just gold, but also greed, avarice, wealth, commerce, having subclasses that are devoted to these principles, which are huge in our daily lives, I think is brilliant. So that, for me, that's a huge win. What did you think when you saw the art? I know you talked about this a little bit, but this is something that people, like, the folks in chat love to hear.
Bury me with that art.
It's so good.
It was amazing. Like, it's the coolest thing in the world as a writer is writing something and then getting to see it come to life. And, you know, whether it's, you know, I'm lucky enough to get to work in television and see my words come to life there, or even just like this is like, I want to put these on my wall in my office, like right back there.
Yeah. You got nice space there for it. Yeah.
They're just so gorgeous. And I love them too, because they don't look like every other hero portrait we see. You know, like we don't get to see a lot of pictures of goblins. I hardly see a minotaur, you know, floating around outside of like maybe like the Theros setting or something like that. You know, it's I mean, I feel like Duragar, wholly underrepresented in art.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Carlos, we're at the end of our time here with you, but this has been awesome and it's great. And obviously we have other Star Trek themed subclasses to explore and other things to do. But if people want to find you and your work, where should they go and what should they do?
Yeah, I'm primarily on Twitter at Carlos_Cisco. That's really where the best place to sort of follow me and check out my other work, and any announcements about upcoming stuff will be probably on there. So
that's awesome. You should. He's a great follow on Twitter. With a lot of fun, full of good jokes too. So just want to throw that out there. Go check out his stuff on the DMs Guild, on Drive-Thru, and of course in Arcadia. Thank you so much for joining us, Carlos.
It was great meeting you.
Have a good one. Thank you, guys.
Bye. There he is, Sam.
Hello.
Sam, how are you? What's going on?
I'm good. It is dark and cold here, but that's okay.
What time is it in New Zealand?
The other it is 7:11. So
that's not bad.
Good time.
Yeah. Well, we're
so just so people know,
wake up with you.
Sam is dialing in from the other side of the planet, which means his signal it's being bounced around various satellites. It may be it may get a little frisky, but stick with us.
Yeah, forgive me if it gets a little bit garbled, but last time it seemed like it was pretty good.
Yeah, going well so far. So, Sam, you have been here before because you are the author of Aces High in Arcadia 3. You're the author of Alabaster's Almanac in this issue of Arcadia. You've also worked on a few other MCDM projects, Kingdoms of Warfare, the Player's Guide to Capital. So it is great to have you back because I feel like,
And I don't know if people know this, but Sam, this may be the first time we've talked about this publicly. Sam is the author of spoilers. Phil Robb better not be in this chat, but Sam is the author of the Somnium Tenebris article. We don't know. It's a lot of text. I don't know what it's going to turn into. But if you're familiar with the Chain of Acheron and the interdimensional squid ship that the Chain of Acheron took over, Sam took that idea and fleshed it out and turned it into an actual interdimensional squid ship, completely populated with bad guys. And it's going to be, I intend on using it. The reason we did this was I intend on using it for the Chains downtime episode, where it's just Phil defending the Somnium Tenebris, and we've got maps now and everything. It's super cool.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to. That squid ship has been taking up a lot of brain space in my head.
It's so cool. Yeah, I only started going over it. It's already James and Sam have already gone back and forth on it, and I've only started going through it, and it is so cool. Like when the Chain of Acheron went and sieged that ship, it was already after there had been a revolt on the ship. So it had like a skeleton crew, basically. But now imagine what Sam did was Sam imagined what was this ship like before that, right? When it was completely populated and it had, Mind Flayer commanders, except not Mind Flayers. And anyway.
Yeah.
It turns out that it's a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah, super cool.
Yes, I am so excited, and I am very eager to unleash that upon the MCDM audience, so that they can unleash it upon their players as well. It's going to be really fun. But I also am just excited to watch Slim run around in there. And
yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait for that solo adventure with Slim by himself, defending the ship from the people trying to take it back from. They're trying to steal this ship we just stole.
It's great. So, but Sam, we are here to talk about Alabaster's Almanac, your article in Arcadia 5. Like many of the authors in Arcadia, I have a pile of pitches from you that I kind of want to do everything in. Talk to me a little bit about Alabaster's Almanac, because this is an article with new spells in it, but you wanted to write it from the perspective of Alabaster, this wizard you've created. Why did you want to use that sort of as your framing device for the spells?
I think Alabaster's Almanac was maybe the first idea that I came up with for an Arcadia pitch when I found out about, I think even potentially before Arcadia was an actual thing, when it was just kind of a germ of an idea a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the inspiration comes pretty directly from an article that Ed Greenwood used to do for Dragon magazine. So I'm a big fan of trawling through old Dragon magazines looking for weird stuff, because my local game store had a big collection of them appear one day for $1, and I was like, I will take a bunch of those. And so he used to write this thing called Wizards 3, I think, where it was just like a bunch of famous wizards from different settings kind of meet in his kitchen or something and swap spells. And it was such a cool idea. It became like a favorite article of mine, I think. And then with Alabaster's Almanac, I wanted to do something kind of similar to that, not exactly the same thing. And Alabaster is a character that I already had sort of in my back pocket, who is in many ways my kind of version of Elminster, I guess.
Yeah. A very sort of eccentric, worldly, traveled the timescape wizard who knows a whole lot of stuff. And what I love about this device too is that it's presented as if this is a periodical that Alabaster sends out to readers, right? It's a mailing list, which hints at like maybe we'll see more periodicals from Alabaster in Arcadia in the future, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was really excited about the idea of doing a series potentially with something like this, but I knew that it was maybe a bit of a hard sell to be like, hey, I know that you've asked for articles for this thing. How about I pitch you an indefinite amount of articles? Just like, I have no idea where this will go.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think
if
other things I'll definitely talk about.
Oh, good. Because I think if the reader's reaction is anything from watching in the Discord, they really like these spells. They think they're really cool. They really love them. They're flavorful. And Matt and I have talked about this before, and we may have even talked about this the last time you were on stream. But what I like about your approach to design is you start with like this is what I want to do. Let's see if this works, right? And from that, it's sort of like a no fear approach to design that you have. That then we're able to like say like, oh, okay, maybe it wouldn't work this way. Maybe this is too complicated. Can we, streamline this idea to make it work this way or that kind of thing? But it's great because it starts with the idea that like we can do anything. So let's try anything we want to do. So tell me about the spells then that you picked. Do you have a favorite among them? Something that you were like, I really need this to be in the game, and that's why I created the spell for it.
I think there are some easy answers to this question. I think that wielding is something that I've had in my game for a long time. And to me, it was kind of important to me that the spells felt real in that they could fit into like the way that D&D magic works, but also in that they kind of felt like they could already exist in the game. Like I wanted it to feel like it has that kind of weird history that a lot of the spells do, where you pick up the game for the first time, you're like, the magic is kind of bizarre and arcane, for lack of a better word, and it has all this history, even just sort of design wise, right? Like there's so much stuff in there that you're like, why would I ever need this spell? This is so strange. Kind of like, I don't know, I can't think of any great examples off the top of my head, but like floating disc is a spell that is completely bizarre. And I kind of wanted my spells to feel the same way. Like you could imagine unearthing them and being like, some designer made this decades ago and it's bizarre. I kind of wanted it to fit in with that really smoothly. And I feel like wielding kind of does that. Wielding seems like it fits a niche that is kind of natural to the game, I think. Like I feel like surely people thought of this as soon as they had both fighters and magic users, right? Like and then the other one is adjacent acquisition, which I think is just really funny. I don't really have much more of an explanation for it than that. I think it's extremely comical to be able to yoink something from 30 feet away. That one I think came out of, I was trawling through, maybe it was the Discworld tabletop game.
Oh, wow.
And there was a spell which is specifically for retrieving tea, and I was like, that's very good.
Perfect.
I'll have that.
Yeah, well,
I'll take that.
Both of these, so Alabaster's adjacent acquisition and wielding can sort of be used to yoink things, as you said, and in fact go tandem, right? You can cast one to steal a weapon from somebody and then cast wielding to be able to use that weapon as a wizard in combat, which is really great. And those seem to be the two that people are talking about a lot because of this idea of being able to like steal something from somebody, which is great. It's great.
That is really interesting. I've seen a lot of people kind of put those two together.
Mm-hmm. And then you have some of these bigger spells that are in here. So like Realize Image is one that essentially allows you to take any, including enormous giant illusions, and make them real for a time. It's a 9th level spell, and it's one that I think we went back and forth a lot on, not to like change what the result was, but to make sure that the result was what you wanted it to be, right? Because when you're making an illusion real, an illusion can be anything. Like, did we want it to mean that you could create 50 vorpal swords that would last for an hour, right? Like, I know that was a question we had at one point, and that's why there's that stipulation about magic items that are created and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like designing that and going back and forth with testers on feedback?
Yeah, that I think is a good example of the thing that you were talking about before, where my approach tends to be, let's throw something at the wall. And I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to do with that in terms of, I guess, like kind of a narrative or gameplay beat. Like, I have this idea of super high level wizard casting illusory dragon, and then another super high level wizard being like, that dragon is going to eat you. And so everything kind of started from there. And I was like, how do I achieve that? And then I thought it would be interesting if you could kind of make the Mirage Arcane spell real. And very quickly, I think we got back that was like, the scope of this is much larger than you would have.
Oh. Uh-oh. Oh no! I think we might have lost Sam.
Follow logical conclusion.
Oh, there you are.
Oh no!
We lost you at the scope of this is, and then you cut off. But now you're back.
Oh, okay. I think all I said was that sometimes the scope of those things can kind of explode out, and I realize that it's much bigger than I thought at first, but it's fun to kind of follow those things through to their logical conclusion, I guess.
Yeah, it was really fun. And one of the things that I think was interesting that I really like about this spell is that a lot of illusion spells are concentration spells, and this is also a concentration spell. And the idea is not necessarily that you will cast the illusion and then make it real, right? But that you will either work in tandem with someone to make an illusion they create real, or you will, like you said, turn someone's illusion against them by making it real, which I think is also really, really cool, and just a lovely little bit of design that sort of encourages teamwork in there, which is really nice.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk to you about Scry Spike, because you seemed really excited about this spell. It's a spell that lets you create a dagger that you can stab a scrying sensor, and then it also harms the person who created the magical sensor to spy on you. What inspired this spell? Why Scry Spike?
What did inspire this
Look at
spell? I should have brought this up before. Yeah, incredible art by Grace Chung did that one, I think.
Yes.
I really love the way the scrying sensor looks in that. It's kind of creepy. It's like a weird hieroglyph. I love it. I'm not 100% sure where this idea came from. I feel like I have always kind of had that feeling of there are ways to know being scryed on, but there isn't any way to like do anything about it. You could prevent it happening in the first place, like if you have anti-divination stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of always just thought it would be very satisfying to be able to kind of shoot down a scrying sensor if you can see it, and then this kind of evolved out of that.
Well, it's one of those spells where once the dungeon master knows the players have access to this, they're going to have someone scry on the heroes, right? And that makes the world of your D&D game seem more like you would expect it to, right? You would expect there to be bad guys or even other NPCs scrying on the heroes and watching them. And so something like Scry Spike would become incredibly useful. But in fact, I don't think we normally do that in our games, right? It's like we should. That would be cool. You would expect that to happen, but how often does it really happen? Well, now that there's Scry Spike, I think DMs are going to be like, oh, this is going to be cool. Time to start scrying on the players.
And I think it's also fun. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I was just going to think, I think scrying is...
I agree with Sam.
Me too. Me too.
All right, Sam, you're breaking up. And I don't even know if you can hear us saying they're breaking up. I like Saboteur Studios' comment that Scry Spike is also a great tool for the DMs if the players get very nosy, right? It sort of gives the dungeon master kind of an excuse to hand out scrolls of scrying or encourage the players to start scrying because the DM knows that in their pocket they've got this cool spell. I love that stuff. I think that stuff's great.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, we're scrying on the big bad, and your big evil wizard then turns out to just stab that scrying Spencer with that knife. Is really cool.
It definitely.
Sam, looks like you're back.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh no!
I'll try not to move.
Yeah, if you don't move and you don't say anything, then it doesn't matter if your stream is borked. Okay, you look like you're back.
I feel like I'm back.
Oh yeah, you're back. You're back.
I feel back. I think Sam is getting Scry Spiked.
Yeah.
So, do people have questions for Sam? Because we could. There's a lot of spells in here that I think are really fun to cover, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. I think people should definitely go check this out because Gaze of Venom. We didn't even talk about my favorite spell, which is Animate Echoes, which lets you look into the past of the area that has happened around you and sort of
really
reverse rewind. Yeah, really great like detective spell. So yeah, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff. But what's chat want to know?
Well, chat loves these spells, and they want more of them. Placecrafter Charlie says, I have to say, all of my players love Shadow Slip, and I have a feeling most, if not all, will be taking it when they level up soon. What does Shadow Slip do, for those who don't know?
Ooh. Shadow Slip is a spell that allows you to briefly become your own shadow and use it to sort of on the door.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, it's
destroyed as a shadow. Pop back into.
Oh no! Sorry, Sam.
How are we doing?
Oh well.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
It's not. Unfortunately, it's not. It sounds like the connection is. It's never perfect. It's always cutting out a little bit. So I fear our bandwidth here is perhaps too limited. Nasay Williams says, realize image, which also sounds awesome. It sounds like it's related to Shadow Slip. Feels so cinematic in my mind. What was the inspiration for that spell? Oh, Sam. No, Sam. I feel like we've reached I feel bad for people watching because I feel like we've reached the limit of what the internet will bear.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should I feel like maybe we should that's not a bad idea, David Rose. Is go voice only. I don't know if that's an option, but it's also kind of, I feel like I don't necessarily want to spend the chat's time dicking around with stuff that may not work.
Yeah. I will say that I also feel bad because Sam got up at 7 a.m. So, but thank you.
I feel bad for Sam.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. So
how
Sam,
about
looks like
just gonna put everybody out of their misery?
Well, if you have a chance before you go, people can follow you at Cryptic Parlor on Twitter. Is there anywhere else they should check you out? Oh, well, the answer is New Zealand. So Sam does have a lot of. Oh, there he is. Maybe.
Yeah, it's not. He's back or he's not back. It's every once in a while we get a new frame. Every once in a while we get a new frame and a new snippet of audio. Yeah. So we appreciate Sam. We appreciate Sam waking up at an ungodly hour of the morning to hang out with us. And I wish we could talk more about his awesome spells. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much.
Please, if you haven't already, please check out Arcadia, because we are incredibly proud to have these folks contributing articles. You know, we pay them well, we work hard, we have a great group of testers who really bust their ass to make sure each article is the best it can be. And they are our testers are you, the viewer's voice here at MCDM, because they want to make things fun and playable and useful and balanced. And the writers all, so far, without exception, the writers have all responded very positively to the revisions that the testers ask for. And as a result, I think Arcadia is the best content you can get for 5e, especially for $5. Actually, I never thought about that. $5 for 5e. Hang on a minute, I got to make a note of that.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah, $5 for 5e.
It's 5e, $5. Call it good. And when they come out with 6th edition, we'll charge $1 more.
Matt, I got this question on Twitter from Willie Abiel, who wrote our mounts articles in Arcadia 1 and 4.
Yeah.
Well, he wanted to know, what is Arcadia in your world?
I mean, it's another manifold, right? There was actually a great thread on Reddit about how, and this gets back to Carlos's day job, right? Where he's like, science fiction has technobabble, right? Science fiction has technobabble. Your D&D campaign can have arcanobabble, right? And so I actually, because of my background in physics, I often deploy real world terms for the geometry of multiple dimensions. And so manifold is a real word in the real world that just means a bounded plane. And so Arcadia is just another world. It's part of my cosmology. And I think it's kind of notionally, people think of it as being above, the same way they think of the world below as being under, but they're not. They're just these like orbiting planes. And Arcadia, actually, unlike the world below, Arcadia is it's like a microplane. It's small, right? It's probably only about as big as, like, you know, a county in the real world. And it's the home of Val, who created the elves, Val, who's the god. And and there was a point where the elves all went and they said they used to be real elves in the mundane world, and they're like, this place sucks, and they went to live with so Arcadia is one of my favorite places to banish someone if they fail their save against banishment or plane shift, right? So all of a sudden, while they're taken out of the combat for a round or two, they get to hang out, and these like centaur dudes walk up to them in this Elysian fields and like, who are you? Right. And so Arcadia is probably my number one place to send banished people. Blanded Gear says, do you find it weird that Arcadia is an actual place in Greece? Well, Arcadia is also an actual place in real world mythology. And in fact, we were going to call my first pitch for Arcadia was that the name of the magazine was going to be Fairy, and the AE was going to have that. It's FAERIE with a little ligature between them, because it's meant to be like a reference to a real world mythological place, right? And that comes from my tradition. This is something that was true going back to the origins of D&D, where the people playing D&D assumed that here in the real world, our mythological realms, like the realm of the underworld in Greek myth, that these places are also accessible in other prime material planes, right? So that your D&D world can also get to a place like Arcadia or a place like the Greek underworld. And so that was all synthesized into now this nonsense that we do every month.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great, and I think it's a great name for a magazine. So it's definitely one that everybody on staff latched onto when we were.
Yeah, as soon as I said Arcadia, everybody was. When I said fairy, everyone was like, and when I said, okay, well, Arcadia, we're like, ooh, and I'm like, okay, it's Arcadia. And also, I just love the idea that it's for me, it represents another vision for Dungeons and Dragons. The world of Arcadia is not necessarily a world where Frazetta type heroes run around killing Tolkien style orcs. It's another it's another world, it's another plane. Anything can happen in Arcadia. And so I that to me is where the covers come from, is that the covers can show us all these different worlds and different takes on stuff. So like you look at the cover of Arcadia this month and you're like, is this a real place that you can go to in a D&D world? What is this? It's like anything's in Arcadia, anything's possible.
I know. It is really great. And I've seen people saying like, there should be an issue of Arcadia where we just give the covers to writers and say, what's happening in this cover? Should there be an article here? And I'm kind of like, I just like the idea, like that's kind of cool to see, like interpreting art via art.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if people have already made on the MCDM subreddit, I guess, which is /r/Matt Colville, someone has already statted up this siege engine. So we've got to grab that for the character, the community creations thing, because I love that idea of showing the cover. Like, who is that elf lord that Grace drew? Like, I think people assume I know. I do not know. I like not knowing, right? I like being surprised and going, whoa, who is that? So I think it would be really cool if we had writers kind of write up the covers and explain to us who these folks are. I also think that somebody suggested, somebody online, I think, and it got picked up by us in our internal corporate company Discord, the idea of doing a kind of a triptych of covers where each one is illuminating some part of a larger whole, maybe a story in 3 parts or a place seen from 3 different points of view. And I was like, we should just straight up do our own take on the classic Dragon Magazine chess piece covers, because I think everyone agrees that because Dragon Magazine had some brilliant covers, but the best were those chess piece covers. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to do that, but I would love to. It depends. We just got to find the right artist for that.
Yeah.
So
and what I love about that, right, is so much of art is like, hey, a writer wrote a thing, can you illustrate this? But to have covers that it's just like, what do you want to draw? What do you want to create?
Well, that's really the great thing about our covers is we go to these artists and we're like, draw what you want. Like we do not, and that's kind of the opposite of what you get in the interior, right? The interior is illustrating the artists working for the writing. But I love the fact that Arcadia covers, I always want them to be anything, right? I don't want to assign the idea of a cover to somebody and say, please draw this. No. We like the idea that we get to work with artists who at least here once they get to draw whatever they want.
Exactly.
So for people who are still here in chat, people who have hung out this whole time for the past hour and a half, James, can you give us a preview of what we're going to see in a future Arcadia articles?
Yeah. So I will say that there are 2 things that are really exciting me that we're going to see down the line, and they're both adventures. So one is an adventure that you've already seen, Matt, for level 0 characters.
Love that. So exciting.
Yes.
God, I was really impressed with that article. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, and it's by a really great author named Chris Bissett, who has created a bunch of their own original role-playing games that people should go check out. They've got stuff on itch. You can get it in hard copy from their website, which is Loot the Room.
Nice.
But yeah, this adventure just takes this idea of a funnel, which is you go in with a bunch of characters. So you go in with a bunch of level 0 characters, and the ones that survive are the ones that create your adventuring party then at the end.
That is so that is not how they played D&D in 1974, 1975, 1976, but it simulates that. It's actually like, I think that's the kind of thing where if they were better designers in the 1970s, that's how they would have done it.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes from this idea, Dungeon Crawl Classics is this role-playing game that has that sort of baked into it. And so Chris has taken it and brought it into D&D. So if you like that idea, you should also check out that game. That's a great game. And then we have another adventure coming from a designer named Anthony Joyce that is all about playing goblins defending a cave, and you like build the cave together, and then adventurers come in and you're trying to stop them. And it's a very gonzo, over the top, you are goblins action adventure. And one of the things, it has a respawn mechanic so that you as a goblin can sacrifice yourself, and then you respawn in one of these rooms and show up and like run back in and try to help. So those are two really fun things that I'm looking forward to. And in our next issue, we've got something great from Gabe Hicks, who wrote the Titan Heart for Arcadia 1, a great adventure called Spelunking from Hannah Carlin. And let's see, we've got one more thing, because there's always 3 articles coming up in Arcadia 6. Oh, my goodness, how could I forget? Mike Shea's The Grim Accord.
The Grim Accord are fucking cool. I love.
Yeah.
So I want to see more of. I don't want to tell the writers what to write. It should always be a bunch of different stuff. But I love the Chained Library, and I love the Grim Accord, because all it does is save the DM work and inspire them. And I think people are starting to understand, because I was so insistent, I was so hyper focused on making Arcadia useful, right? I wanted every article to be something that the player or the DM could just use in their game immediately, that I think people picked up on that. And so that's how the community judges Arcadia. Because I was talking about I want it to be useful. They judge it on, would I use this or not? And that's cool. You should judge it by that. However, that was not the juice of Dragon Magazine back in the day. The juice was just reading the magazine. And I think I would only ever use one article, maybe like one article every couple of months, right? But that wasn't the point. The point was, it's just inspiration. It's just fun to read. Even if you never use this stuff, it's going to start the wheels in your head spinning. And definitely you will be more inspired and productive because of the stuff in Arcadia. When I see stuff like the Chained Library and the Grim Accord specifically, it's like, this is so cool. It saves me time. I can just grab these characters and drop them into my world. And then we got art for them, and they look really cool. So yeah, I want more stuff where it's like content, we still want more rules, we want more everything, but just places and people and items and stuff you can just go boop and drop into your game. I think everybody likes the idea that there are other adventuring companies out there, right? And that some of them can be competing and good, some of them can be competing and bad, some of them can be neutral, right? And so for me, seeing stuff like the Grim Accord, I'm like, man, I want more of this. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
We've got a lot of stuff like that, because those are also really fun to work on and collaborate with the author on. So you'll see more organizations, more places, more people, more things like that you're going to be able to drop right into your games. And it's also what people said they wanted when we did our survey, which is great too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so definitely fun stuff coming up.
James, thank you very much.
Just sit here and name articles all day.
Right? Yeah, we've got how many? Like, let people know, how far in the future are we plotting out Arcadia?
So we are plotted out until the end of the year. So Arcadia 11, we have articles contracted for, and probably because we've started to get all of those in. You know, we're gonna get Kingdoms of Warfare out, and we're gonna work on that and get some other things started. But then I'll probably you know, sit down with you, Matt, and talk about charting a path for what does 2022 look like for Arcadia.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh my God, it's already 2021. My God. And also Kingdoms and Warfare. The PDF for Kingdoms and Warfare is going to be here real soon. I can't say it'll drop in 2 weeks from now, because people at MCM would get really angry at me, and it might not. The future is uncertain. It might not drop 2 weeks from now, but gosh, wouldn't it be nice if it dropped 2 weeks from now? I think so. So let's see what happens.
All right. Well, I'm getting messages from Lars. Are you getting messages from Lars?
Yeah, somebody's angry. Yeah, but it's going to be soon, quote unquote, soon trademark.
Exactly. So,
I literally
but
just got a message from Lars. Said, Matt, fucking stop. No, can't stop, won't stop.
Oh boy.
It definitely won't be in 2 weeks, but wouldn't it be nice if it was in 2 weeks? It would be nice. It would be nice, but it won't be. It won't be. No, don't. No, it's ridiculous. 2 weeks. Come on. Don't be ridiculous. So much work left to do on it. Anyway, thank you, James. James, you were a fantastic
I am not
host.
responsible. I'm not responsible. I just want to, since Lars is watching, I just want to state that.
Really, James is a victim here along with everybody else. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited for folks to get their hands on Kingdoms of Warfare. And I also would like people to see all the work Pesto did on Pesto. Pesto has a 15,000 word article on for Kingdoms of Warfare that we gotta art and turn into something cool. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. James, you make this really easy and fun. Thank you for hosting and asking great questions for our authors. And I think we're going to do another one of these.
Thanks for doing this. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, my job's easy. I just sit here and watch chat and listen to really cool people talking about dope shit. So
that's awesome.
Probably around a month from now, plus or minus a week, we should have another one of these and another issue of Arcadia for you folks to check out. And I think every issue of Arcadia, I think is cooler than the one before. So I hope folks are enjoying and we love doing this. We love making this content for you folks. All the money you folks give us, all we want to do with it is put it back into making dope stuff for you folks.
Exactly. Yeah, and the community's been great and really received this well. So thank you hugely for supporting Arcadia and for spreading the word and for showing up to the streams and cheering the authors on, because that means a ton too. So thanks.
Yes, 100%. All right, I think that's it.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.